What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video here on Big Blue Avenue. This is our YouTube channel. Make sure to go check us out on Instagram, Twitter, and Big Blue Avenue on YouTube. I have two very special guests here today, Kyle Russo and Hank Indictor. You may have seen them before. Guys, how's it going today? Thank you so much for hopping on.
Doing great, Tom. How you doing this morning?
Doing good. Hank, what's up, man?
Not too much. I'm enjoying a recent hot streak by the Yankees, but I'm still pretty happy about what Gettleman did in the draft, and I'm pretty excited for the NFL season. I don't know about you guys, but let's get into this.
This video is going to be highlighted on the 2021 New York Giants schedule that was released on Wednesday evening, although there was a few leaks that happened earlier that day, so we kind of had an idea what it was when it was officially released. But just a couple footnotes before we get started. Obviously, we're going to break the schedule down game by game. We're not going to give like game predictions, but we're going to give our general overall thoughts, go over some of the X's and O's, then dive into some of the key takeaways. But again, folks, if you haven't already, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to this channel. We really appreciate all the support. So let's get into the schedule. The Giants have the 8th easiest schedule based on opponents' winnings records from last year. And, you know, it's funny that I bring this up because a lot of these games don't look very easy on the schedule. My first initial thought is I actually like our schedule. I don't like that we start off non-conference. But let's get into week one. I kind of want to talk about week one. We're playing the Denver Broncos. Broncos were 5-11 last year. Familiar face there. Their offensive coordinator is our former head coach, Pat Shurmur, which I know we all love. And then the Broncos actually just signed our starting right tackle from last year yesterday. They signed Cam Fleming, who started all 16 games for us at right tackle in 2020. So, Kyle, I'm going to start with you here. The Denver Broncos are a football team. Yes, they were 5-11 this year, but you certainly can't underestimate them.
No, you definitely can't underestimate them. And, you know, with this game, you look at their draft that they had, and they had one of the better drafts, getting Patrick Surtain on top of the two cornerbacks that they already had in Ronald Darby and Kyle Fuller, who they brought in the offseason. And, you know, obviously Vic Fangio is a defensive guy. That defense is going to be loaded with Von Miller coming back. They're going to be a good defense on the defensive side of the ball. The question with Denver is their offense. Sort of with what the Giants had last year as a struggle, where still questions at the QB, didn't necessarily have the loaded offensive weapons that they thought to have had due to injury, but now are getting them back and now adding more offensive weapons for the Broncos, drafting Javonte Williams, third best running back, in my opinion, out of UNC in this year's draft, and drafting Quinn Miners to be on the offensive line as well. So improving on both sides of the ball for the Broncos. So definitely going to be an interesting matchup, first game of the season for the New York Giants.
Yeah, I think Denver is kind of an odd choice for the week one. I think we all know who I really wanted to play week one, and pretty much the same as everybody else. But with that being said, I think it should be a very interesting matchup. You, like Kyle alluded to, I agree with him in the fact that I think the Broncos had an excellent draft pick, especially the Patrick Surtain pick. And I think much like the Giants with their own quarterback, this is a year where we're going to see whether Drew Lock really is going to be the answer to the Broncos quarterback situation. I can see him, much like with Daniel Jones, I can see Drew Lock being the answer. But again, I'm not saying this with 100% certainty, but I think this is definitely an interesting game, and I definitely see the Giants having a very good shot at winning it.
Yeah, I mean, you guys touched upon some good points so far. To go over a little bit more deeper onto their defensive side of the ball, obviously they're deep at corner and their safeties are scary a little bit. They have Justin Simmons back there, but I'm not afraid of their front seven at all. I know they have Bradley Chubb, but look, they're not very deep. I feel like this is a game where the Giants can utilize Saquon Barkley, run the football, get some nice crossing patterns to Evan Ingram, Kyle Rudolph, utilize Sterling Shepard, take a couple of deep chances to Kenny Golladay because that's why you brought him in here. And now you have Kadarius Toney as well, our first-round draft pick. So I think their strength of their team is the secondary, and you guys mentioned how they have some new weapons, in particular a new offensive lineman in Quinn Miners, Kyle, who the Giants were looking at as a potential day 2 option, and they decided to obviously not take him, and obviously he slid to the late 90s. I think he was pick number 98. And the Giants were they traded up to 71, so they weren't going to get him anyway. But, you know, it's very, very interesting, this football game. I think Pat Shurmur coming back to MetLife, that should be very interesting. I think Azeez Ojulari and Lorenzo Carter against Cam Fleming and Garrett Bowles. That should be very interesting. Garrett Bowles is probably their best offensive lineman. Their left tackle. I'm not a fan of their center, Lloyd Cushenberry. A lot of Broncos fans are down on him already after just one season. So I think we have the ability to win that football game. But moving on to week 2, we're going to talk about the Washington football team, a team that won the NFC East last year. They were 9-7. Obviously, this game will be televised on Thursday Night Football at 8:20 p.m. And the Giants will be playing in Washington. This is actually a special place, FedEx Field. This is where Joe Judge got his first NFL victory as a head coach last year, back in, I believe it was week 6, I want to say. And another fun fact, Daniel Jones obviously owns the Washington football team. He's undefeated against them. And the storyline here for Washington, obviously, they improved as a football team in free agency. They added guys like Curtis Samuel and De'Ami Brown to their wide receiving core. Obviously, they had Antonio Gibson, Chase Young. They did lose a couple of edge rushers, but I'm kind of happy where the Giants are at against them. I think this is going to be a very competitive game. Not to mention the biggest hole on their roster is the quarterback position. I think they're one of the very few teams you could probably count on less than half a hand that did not get their quarterback in the 2020 offseason for long term, where they have Ryan Fitzpatrick, who is the 5th different starting quarterback for them in the last 5 home openers.
It's again, another interesting matchup for the Giants, like you talked about, Tom, like drafting Jamin Davis. I mean, that kind of solidifies that defense to the point where you say to yourself, well, what can you run offensively to get something going? Because the run game, that's going to be hard to develop with the linebacking core in that front 4 with Montez Sweat, De'Aaron Payne, Jonathan Allen, and Chase Young. I mean, that front 4 is arguably the best in football. On top of the fact they solidified their corner position, already having Kendall Fuller drafting a cornerback out of Minnesota in the first round, Benjamin St-Juste, I believe, and then adding to that offensive weaponry in which they already had with Terry McLaurin, bringing in Curtis Samuel, Logan Thomas, Antonio Gibson, who was one of the best rookie running backs probably outside of James Robinson, maybe pure running back, or maybe he was better than that because of his versatility in Antonio Gibson last year, and bringing in De'Ami Brown as well, also solidifying that left tackle position where once Trent Williams left, it kind of was a missing piece to their offensive line, drafting Samuel Cosme in the 2nd round. So Washington, while their quarterback position is questioned, I think a lot of those other positions on the field aren't really such a question at this point in time, at least for me.
Yeah, Washington, I didn't necessarily think their drafting was as good. I thought they reached on Davis, their first pick. I think that's what his name is. But at the same time, I think like Kyle alluded to, they have a lot of other positions that are pretty much covered. And there's a reason why up until the draft happened, I had Washington as probably one of my early favorites for the division. Because, I mean, look at their defense with Montez Sweat and Chase Young. That defense pretty much bullied their way to winning the NFC East, albeit in a very weak division. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, and you've got a winning streak on the line going into that game at FedEx Field. And considering how much the Giants have been winning so much against Washington, this is actually a game that kind of makes me nervous going into the season because, like, I think with winning streaks, eventually Washington could find a way to win. But then again, knowing the Giants, I can easily see them taking this one because, as I've often said in years past, whenever there's a losing streak or whenever they need to find a win, Washington usually comes at the right time.
Yeah, last year we were winless, and then we played Washington, and then we beat them. But this year is going to be much different. Washington improved as a football team, but we also improved as a football team. We have to give ourselves a little bit of credit, too. I actually like Jamin Davis a lot. I don't necessarily know if he was a reach, but I think the only true reach of the first round, in my opinion, was Alex Leatherwood. I don't want to digress from the point here, but I think that linebacking core for Washington is really good. I think he solidifies that linebacking core, who actually just brought in a former friend of ours and David Mayo. Washington has David Mayo and Landon Collins both on their defense, so they could potentially have a little bit of an inside scoop about some of the former Giants or some of their former teammates that are on this Giants roster. So that's going to be very interesting heading into week number 2, especially Mayo, who played with this Patrick Graham defense last year. So week 3, the Atlanta Falcons. And now I know we're all big Kyle Pitts fans. They play the Falcons at home, 1:00. Falcons are coming off a 4-12 season last year. They fired their head coach. They have a first-year rookie head coach in Arthur Smith, who obviously helped the Titans offense over the last year or two and emerged to new heights, revitalized Ryan Tannehill's career. And Hank, we'll go in reverse order. I'll start with you here. What do you think the Atlanta Falcons present? I think the biggest mismatch, in my opinion, is Kyle Pitts. Although they do have Julio Jones, I'm very confident in Bradbury Bunker to lock him down or at least contain him to the point where he doesn't blow us up for the big play. Kyle Pitts is the guy I'm most concerned about in this game. And again, these first 3 games, guys, are all winnable games. I mean, we could easily be 3-0 by the end of week 3.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
I'm cautiously optimistic about these first 3 games, but Hank, talk to me about Kyle Pitts because we historically can't cover tight ends.
You took the words right out of my mouth of what I was going to say.
My bad.
No, you're good. But yeah, no, Kyle Pitts, there's a reason that this guy was on my list for who I wanted the Giants to draft. Now, granted, I didn't expect him to get taken this early by the Atlanta Falcons. I thought maybe he would be taken by, say, Carolina or Philadelphia, because I also didn't expect so many teams to trade up. But that's neither here nor there. I think Kyle Pitts is probably the most talented player that was taken out of the draft. And if you look at film, you can see why. He is, as LPG once tweeted, a man amongst boys when he plays that tight end position. And as we often say ad nauseum on our shows, Giants can't cover tight ends. Now, who knows? Will our linebacker core be able to handle him? Hopefully this year will be different, but I'm more scared of him, to be honest, than I am of Julio Jones, especially because, like Tom, you alluded to earlier, Bradbury Bunker is someone who I can definitely see locking him down. And I also like the acquisition of Adoree Jackson too. So I can see this Giants defense really doing well against the Falcons. And yeah, like you said, it's a winnable game. I wouldn't be surprised if they went 3-0. I'm not as high on that as you are, Tom, although I'd hope you're right. But you're right. It's definitely winnable for sure.
This is low-key going to be one of my favorite matchups of the year, just based on the offense that, Atlanta is going to be able to throw at this Giants team, as well as how good we're really going to be able to see how good this offense is on the Giants side of things as the Falcons defense. Although I think they've improved a little bit through the draft. Richie Grant was one of my favorite players in this draft, arguably the best pure safety in this draft coming out of UCF. This is going to be one of the most interesting matchups in my personal opinion. Like you guys said, Kyle Pitts is a matchup nightmare. He's 6'6", 240 pounds. Essentially, he's a bigger version of what everybody said Evan Ingram was supposed to be coming out of college, in that versatile tight end build, but wide receiver type speed and agility. And again, at the end of the day, Matt Ryan, I think, as far as I'm concerned, Matt Ryan was never the problem. Is that the defense is always so bad that no matter how many points they put up offensively, it didn't matter because they were blowing games late in games. But again, the defense is not improved for Atlanta enough to the point where I think the Giants can have some offensive edge. But at the same time, as we saw a lot last year, is that as much as the Giants defense is as good as they are and was able to stop a lot of these offenses, it's a matter of how long they're going to be able to stay out there on the field and continuously compete with Atlanta throwing Matt Ryan, Mike Davis at the running back, Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, and now Kyle Pitts and Hayden Hurst, who didn't have a bad season last year as well. So that's definitely going to be one of my more favorite matchups to watch this season.
I think that's why we loaded up on DBs in the offseason. We drafted 2 corners and we signed 1, and we drafted 2 edge rushers. So to keep that flow, to keep that rotation going on defense, granted, if the offense does not play as what's advertised heading into this year, and the defense is out there much longer on the field. But moving on to week 4, we're at the New Orleans Saints. I know we're at Washington in week 2, but in my opinion, this is the first true road game of the season. Not to downplay the Washington game, but when you go into the Superdome, especially if there's fans there, you're in trouble. Historically, the Giants are not very successful playing on the road against the Saints. The last time the Giants won a true road game against the Saints was 1993. Over 27 years ago. And then the Giants they beat them in 2005, which was considered a road game technically, but they had to play that game at Giants Stadium due to Hurricane Katrina. The Saints are a very interesting team. I think they still have a top 3 O-line in the NFL behind the Colts and probably the Browns. And then they obviously lost a lot of guys in the offseason. They lost Trey Hendrickson. They lost Alex Anzalone. They lost Sheldon Rankins. They lost a lot of good players, Janoris Jenkins and Drew Brees, most importantly, right?
Yeah.
To retirement. So now, I mean, you got to think Jameis Winston is probably the favorite to start at quarterback. I wouldn't write off Ian Book. I wouldn't even write off Taysom Hill, although I do think he's much better suited for that dynamic utility role that they utilize him in. I think that's where he's best bet. But again, this is a game where the Saints, they have a good amount of weapons. They have a good offensive line, which concerns me in this game. But what do you guys think about this game? I think it's going to be very interesting. Again, I think if the Giants play well in these first 3 games, I think they have a really good shot to beat them. But this is a really tough test. This is definitely the toughest of the first 4 games on the Giants schedule.
Yeah, this is definitely one of the tougher matchups. What gives me hope is, like you said, Tom, they lost a lot of key defensive pieces that made them so dominant the last couple of years on the defensive side of the ball. And with the lack of draft picks and a lot of questionable draft picks, I think, you talk about reaches in the first round. Peyton Turner is the name that came to my mind. I didn't even have him on my draft board. I don't even think till the second round, maybe even third round. I didn't even recognize the name, but needed an edge replacing Trey Hendrickson, who they lost to the Cincinnati Bengals. But on top of the fact, they just continue to, while the offensive weapons that they have are good, they have absolutely no depth. After Alvin Kamara and Michael Thomas, it's really a big drop-off. Traquan Smith kind of stepped up last year, but they necessarily didn't improve upon the wide receiver position. I think Latavius Murray is still there backing up Alvin Kamara.
Yeah.
But combined with the fact that there's questions at the quarterback position, while we've seen Taysom Hill be able to step in, and I think he's undefeated as an NFL quarterback, which is insane. He's performed very well in every single game that he started. It's going to be very interesting considering that we know with James Bradbury, that's another thing I forgot to bring up with the Atlanta Falcons, is that he played for years with the Carolina Panthers, so he's faced these guys before. But stopping Alvin Kamara is easier said than done. It's ultimately virtually impossible, no matter how good your defense is, just based on the versatility that he has coming out of the backfield. But definitely, I don't want to say another winnable game, but definitely a game that I could see being very close down to the wire if the Giants play their cards right.
I think this is a weaker Saints team than in years past because we know the salary cap hurt them, and I think that's pretty much why they lost the guys that Tom mentioned above. But with that having been said, considering this game is at the Superdome, which I think not even just Giant fans, I think a lot of opposing NFL fans would agree that can be a house of horrors. I think that'll make it very tough. And, the Saints still have a lot of key pieces from good teams in the past few years. I think this is probably the tougher game, without a doubt, of the schedule. I don't know if I want to call it winnable, but I think, Tom, like you mentioned, they can definitely go 4-0 if they really play their cards right, hopefully.
So, yeah, I somewhat agree with both of you guys are saying. I see where you're coming from. The reason why I really do think this is a winnable game is because it's Jameis Winston against the Giants secondary. I just don't trust him regardless of what's happened this past offseason with him. But I think it is a winnable game, but it'll be left to be seen. I think if there's one game that you're probably looking on the schedule as a loss in the first 4, this is the one. So with that being said, we'll move on to the Dallas Cowboys in Dallas at 4:25 p.m. The Giants will see Dak Prescott for the first time since his gruesome injury nearly a year to the day later. The Giants split the series last year with the Cowboys. They actually did play them in Week 5 last year as well. They lost that game but then beat them in Week 17 to keep their playoff hopes alive for about another 8 to 9 hours. Before that was a little less than that. But you guys get the point. And now the Giants are playing them again in Week 5. This should be a lot of fun. Dak should be back. No pun intended. And I think the Giants, again, have a real shot to win this game. So do the Cowboys. The Cowboys, they improved defensively, but they did have a lot of reaches in this draft. A lot of guys that had like 6th to 7th round grades on them that were being taken in the 4th and 5th round solely because of the pro day stats. Kyle, I'll start with you here. I know the Dallas Cowboys are definitely probably the favorite on paper to win this division as of right now. But what do you think about this matchup in Week 5?
For me, I think the whole Dallas organization as a whole, this is going to be a revenge tour from every stem down, between Ezekiel Elliott being flawed, between Mike McCarthy being on the hot seat a game after they lose their starting franchise quarterback, between Dak Prescott coming back from a tremendously gruesome injury and getting one of the highest quarterback contracts of all time in an injured season, being a question mark. Granted that we've had this conversation about him finally getting paid last 3 years when he was tearing up the league, and they finally decided to do so when he got hurt. It's going to be a very, very, very difficult task at hand, especially playing in Jerry's world. I think that's always been a tough. We talk about, the Mercedes Dome. Playing in Dallas is always difficult for us as well. We always struggle there. And again, what it comes down for me is that I know that the Cowboys are going to constantly be throwing at our defense. And while our defense is very good, it's a matter of, we saw it last season again, is that they got gassed. How much offensively are we going to be able to compete with this team? Because this is a game, whereas Tom, like you said, Dallas's defense is not, they're upgraded, but not the best based on what they drafted and based on what they were able to accomplish in free agency, as they were another team that didn't have much money to spend outside of Dak. So with that being said, are you going to be able to put 25 plus points up on the board? Are you going to be able to put 30 points up on the board? Because that's the type of game that I see this being.
I think I would expect nothing less than this game to be another back and forth shootout. Like, if you notice in the past few years, that's what happens every single time the Giants go to Dallas, I feel like. Last year being another example of this. And I would say the Cowboys are definitely, I still think they're probably the team that's going to be one of the biggest threats to the Giants with the division. Like, I like what they did in the draft. They were lucky to trade down and get a player who I think they probably would have taken anyways at number 10. And it's amazing. Yeah. I think the only reason he even fell down that far was due to like him opting out for the season. But regardless, I think Micah Parsons was a solid draft pick for the Cowboys. I think Dak Prescott, while, we can make the case that he had great seasons the past few years before, I think giving him the bank especially coming off that gruesome injury was, I would say, borderline insane, maybe even more than borderline. But with that being the case, I think the Cowboys are still a team that you definitely have to worry about. They got a lot of weapons on their squad, like CeeDee Lamb and the guy on the Raiders. What was his name?
Cooper.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry for that brain fart. The Cowboys have a lot of weapons, and obviously you still got to worry about stopping Ezekiel Elliott. So I would expect nothing less for another back and forth shootout. Will the Giants win or not? I'm not even going to try to predict that one, but it's definitely an intriguing matchup for sure. And surprised it's not another Sunday night football game like it usually is.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be tough because it's on the road in Dallas, the Dak revenge tour, as you said, the Cowboys revenge tour, really. I think this is a winnable game. I think this is a game where you go to Kenny Golladay a lot. Again, we brought him in to make contested catches. The Cowboys have two young corners. Their two starting corners will likely be Trayvon Diggs and potentially Kelvin Joseph, guys that are first and second year players. You want to attack them in this game, and that's where I think the Giants need to scrape and claw, take advantage of that, and I think they will. So, but moving on to week 6, we're playing the LA Rams back at home. We played them last year. We fought tough. Again, to what Kyle said before, the defense was out there a little too much. We lost 17-9, did not score a touchdown in that game, and now it's not Jared Goff in town anymore. It is Matthew Stafford. So this is by far the toughest game through the first 6 weeks. Again, the Rams are a team that a lot of people have been downplaying them for some reason. A lot of people have been downplaying them in the NFC West. I'm a little confused as to why. I mean, I think they should be the early favorites to take that division, especially, when you look at the Seahawks, a team that only had 3 draft picks. I think they're on the decline, if I'm being honest with you. Yeah. And I think the Rams are on the rise. So, I don't know. This game has a lot. And again, the Rams have a good defense too. I mean, look what happened. I think the Giants tried to get Leonard Floyd in the offseason. They were unsuccessful. I mean, he was great for the Rams last year. I mean, I love their secondary and what they got. So I know they lost John Johnson to the Browns. I believe they lost Troy Hill as well, but you still have a good plethora.
Michael Brockers too, remember?
On the line. Yeah, you still have a good plethora of players that kind of makes you think that the Rams are a legitimate threat to the Bucs in the NFC this year. So, again, I don't know if you guys had any thoughts on this game, but I personally think this is going to be a tough one.
Yeah, this is going to be really tough because, again, some of the points that I was going to bring up is while the defense, I think, is really good still, I don't think it's going to be as good as it was last year for the Rams. And, again, my take on Jared Goff is that he was never he was limited with Sean McVay because of what Jared Goff was able to do. It's not the case with Matthew Stafford anymore. Matthew Stafford, I think, has one of the best arms in football and was completely – I don't want to say wasted. I hate using that word, but 10 plus years in Detroit and never really got to show what he's truly capable of doing so because of not being surrounded with the proper pieces, especially on that O-line and defensive side as well. Never built a defense for him. So now with a team that has a tremendous defense, a team that has a decent amount of offensive weapons, I think that's why people are sleeping on them as well, is because the Rams, if you're breaking it down, are probably have one of the worst depth charts in the NFL. Like if one person goes down, that's pretty much it, especially on the wide receiving core, even though they drafted Tutu Littell, I think, out of Louisville. Out of Louisville. So they built up that wide receiving core a little bit through the draft, again, behind Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp. But again, with Matthew Stafford, I think it's a completely different ballgame. I know we're looking at 17-9 last year. I think those numbers offensively can go up a lot more with Matthew Stafford behind center, and it comes down to what the Giants can be able to accomplish with their offense, essentially.
Yeah, I would agree. I think this is if there's going to be one game on this schedule right now that I'm probably going to pick as a loss, it's most likely going to be this one. I think the Rams definitely improved with the quarterback position with Matthew Stafford. Now, granted, the Rams obviously gave up a lot. I mean, I'll give you a weird fact about the Rams. We're probably going to be in our Kyle, with the exception of you, obviously. Tom and I are probably going to be in our 30s by the time the Rams have another first-round pick. So it'll be interesting to see if that's worth it. And, I think the Rams, defensively, they're stacked. Leonard Floyd was a guy that I would have loved to have had, but I like what he's done, and seeing the last game, I don't think it's going to be as much of a low-scoring game as it was last year, but I definitely see the Rams being a big roadblock, and I can definitely see the Giants having a tough time. But hopefully they can get their offense going in this one.
Then week 7, we have the Carolina Panthers, 1:00 start at MetLife. This is, again, two good young head coaches, Joe Judge against Matt Rule. I'm really excited for this game. It's also Sam Darnold, his return to MetLife, because I think the week 1 game against the Jets is at home for them down in Carolina. So I like this game a lot. Very winnable game for the Giants. Again, I think they have the slightly better roster than the Panthers. I know their defense has kind of taken a downfall since losing Luke Kuechly. I know he's a coach now, but, all in all, I think the Giants have the better roster. I think, again, you mentioned mid-season is around the time where teams start to hit their stride, right? And I think with a good amount of weapons that we have, I think Daniel Jones and Kenny Golladay, Kyle Rudolph, John Ross, they'll be extremely in sync by then. They'll be hitting those deep routes, and I'm not the biggest fan of the Panthers secondary, despite them drafting J.C. Horn. They're an interesting football team, right? A lot of people are picking them to potentially snag out a wild card spot this year. Actually, it all depends on the health of Christian McCaffrey. I think if he goes down, they're screwed. If he stays healthy, they have a chance. But I think this is a winnable game for the Giants. And you know what? In fact, I think they will win because I just think we're the better football team. But you can't downplay the Panthers either. They have some really good weapons. Robbie Anderson, DJ Moore. They didn't draft a tight end, but they do have Dan Arnold from the Arizona Cardinals, who scored that insane lollipop touchdown against us last year. I'll never forget that play. That was the worst play defensively for us of the season, in my opinion, like the unluckiest play.
Didn't they draft the guy tight end in Notre Dame? Right?
Tommy. Yeah,
but he's a blocker. He's not.
Yeah, I mean that's just my opinion because I watched him for 3-4 years. He's not very good at receiving, but as a Notre Dame fan that I am, but you never know. He could be a weapon for them too. They could change his game a little bit. Matt Rule, a very young, creative mind, so I wouldn't doubt it.
Yeah, I feel like I'm a record player. Just keep on repeating what I'm saying, but it's basically the same thing with a lot of these matchups and a lot of these teams. Is that you look at it's so hard to even predict what this game is capable of being, for the sole reason of while the defense I think that for the Giants is a little better. It's almost a carbon copy of two teams, right? Two young coaches, two really good offensive weaponry schemes where you have, we obviously know the Giants side of the ball, so I'm just going to list the Panthers: Robbie Anderson, DJ Moore, Terrace Marshall Jr., which I think is huge, and then Christian McCaffrey, who, when healthy, is arguably the best offensive weapon in football based on what he's able to do. You could mark him up for 2+ touchdowns a game the way they use him as a 30-touch kind of guy.
Yeah.
Now with all these receivers, I don't know if that's really going to happen, but it really comes down to the fact is Daniel Jones going to win the game, or is Sam Darnold going to win the game? That's what I really think it's going to come down to. And when I look at these two teams, I think the Giants have the edge based on the defensive side of things. But again, at the same time, two young coaches. I think Matt Rule, we saw last year, even though they didn't come away with a lot of wins, they were very close in a lot of these games, like the Giants were. So I think now with the team that essentially he wants to put out there, it can be a lot closer of a matchup than I think it would have been last year.
Yeah.
So interestingly enough, before I get into the game itself, I just want to say, Tom, I think you might remember I talked a little bit about this with you at the end of the 29 season, but Matt Rule was the guy that I initially wanted the Giants to hire as coach. If I'm going to be honest with you, I saw a little bit of what he did in college. In fact, if you look at the Carolina Panthers, I think he's on a similar path. Both teams he coached Baylor and Temple. He had bad first seasons with them. Not really because it was his fault. It was like him trying to overhaul the program, make them better. And by the end of his time with both of those programs, he got them into bowl games and he ended up winning with them. So you look at the Carolina Panthers, there are a few people that see the Panthers as a playoff team this year. And you know what? I'd be hard pressed to disagree with that. I think they're really good on the offensive side of the ball. And even though, as I may have told you, I probably would have taken Patrick Surtain if I was them, but you can't really argue the Horn pick. I think the Panthers definitely improved with the secondary. Is it enough to stop the Giants? I don't really think so. I think the Giants, at the end of the day, ultimately are the better team. And I think while the Panthers are not really a team they should be sleeping on, I can definitely see the Giants winning this game for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I also do think James Bradbury used to go up against DJ Moore in practice every day, so he knows a lot about him. Dave Gettleman drafted some of these players that are still on that roster, so it'll be interesting to see how that game pans out. Moving on to Week 8, we head to Arrowhead to play the Kansas City Chiefs on Monday Night Football at 8:15 p.m. It'll be Patrick Mahomes against Patrick Graham. That's the key to the game right there.
That's a Monday Night Football game?
Yep, Monday Night Football. And, our fellow Chiefs fan, Paul Lombardi's already been talking to us about that, trying to set up plans for that. That should be interesting. And the Chiefs actually made a little graphic making fun of Giants quarterback Daniel Jones, tying his shoelaces together. I don't know if you guys saw the post on Instagram, but Daniel Jones is the new self-proclaimed Eli Manning when it comes to memes. I mean, let's be honest. You're not a real Giants football quarterback if you're not memed. I mean, Eli was memed throughout his entire career. So Daniel Jones is on a very, very similar path right now heading into year 3. But look, guys, I'm not saying – I mean, look, there's a chance in every football game, right? There's games on the schedule that we're not supposed to win, that we're going to win, and there's games that we're supposed to win that we're probably not, right? And again – nobody thought we would win in Seattle last year, but we did with the backup quarterback. So what I'm saying is there's a chance. You never know what could happen. This is definitely the toughest game through the first 8 weeks. Again, we just mentioned the Rams are going to be very tough as well. But again, the Chiefs, they were there till the very end last year until they lost to the Bucs. So again, it all comes down to what kind of crazy game plan can Patrick Graham devise up against Patrick Mahomes. And what can the Giants do offensively to keep Patrick Mahomes off the field? That's going to be the key to that game.
Yeah, Hank, you shoot first because I've been going first in a lot of these.
All good, bro. I would say that if Patrick, I'm going to be blunt straight off the bat. I think for the Giants to beat the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes is going to have to probably come up with a borderline perfect game plan for sure defensively. I mean, then again, I would not really put it past him. We saw he pretty much broke the. He did break the Seattle Seahawks last year. I think obviously we know the Rams watched some film from that Giants game, and you saw what happened in the playoffs. And who knows? Can they stop Patrick Mahomes? I don't know, but we'll see what happens. I think really what it's all about, like Tom alluded to, I think it's really more about the Giants offense being able to keep up with Patrick Mahomes. Because if they're down by like 3, 2 or 3 touchdowns early on, then they're in trouble.
Yeah, for me, we talk about, because I know that last year I was an advocate. I was one of those people who said, no way the Giants are going to win in Seattle. The people it's very hard to play at CenturyLink Field. I mean, this statement is solidified and put in concrete. Nobody goes to Arrowhead and wins. I think that Patrick Mahomes is 44-9 as a starter for the Chiefs since entering in the league. I think he's only lost 2 of those games at home in Arrowhead. One of them was against the Raiders last year, and I think another year prior they lost at home. Otherwise, he doesn't lose in Arrowhead. It's virtually impossible. And on top of the fact, in terms of what the Giants have to put out offensively, while defensively, I think you have to live and die by the fact that you're just not going to be able to stop them, especially after this well and improved offensive line in which they've been able to establish in the blink of an eye between Joe Thuney and trading for Orlando Brown at the left tackle position, which was huge for them this offseason. On that offensive side of the ball for the Giants, I talked about Dallas having to be 25, 30 points. The Giants are going to have to put up 30-plus points to win this game, in my opinion.
Yeah. It'll be interesting. Again, we've beaten the Chiefs in the past a lot when we weren't supposed to beat them. Again, week after 9/11 or 2 weeks after 9/11 in Arrowhead, we beat them. And then in 2005, the big Larry Johnson game, I think we still found a way to beat them. That was around Christmas time. But again, we're talking like 20 years ago. This is the modern day Kansas City Chiefs, guys.
This is Patrick Mahomes.
Yes, yep. This is Patrick Mahomes. This is not Trent Green anymore. So, or Damon Horde. So let's get to week 9. We play the Las Vegas Raiders at home. Again, West Coast team traveling to East Coast, 1:00 start time. I assume Derek Carr is going to be under center for them. I mean, he most likely will unless anything crazy happens. I know the Raiders, they lost a few key offensive linemen. Again, they did not have the best NFL draft. Their defense still is a big work in progress. John Gruden, he's there, but I'm not. This is one of the games that I'm going to tell you that the Giants should win this football game. They definitely should. I don't. Again. Yes, Darren Waller scares me as a tight end. Josh Jacobs, I think we'll be able to contain him with our front. If our defensive line is so good. That's why Blake Martinez had so many tackles last year. So yeah, that's exactly. I love the jersey, by the way, Hank. That's awesome stuff.
Thanks.
But
I think the player I had to.
I think this is a win for the Giants. I mean, again, we're not gonna write a book on our predictions for these games. We're not going to hold this by the record because we'll make our predictions as we get there. But as of right now, I'm feeling pretty confident about week 9. And then, so I think we're rolling in hot before the bye.
Yeah. I think with this game, this is one of those games where you could say, like, there's really no reason why the Giants should lose this football game. I mean, not that, because we saw, listen, I just brought it up with the Chiefs. The Vegas was able to go into Arrowhead and make Patrick Mahomes make mistakes. So they're capable of being a good football team. And they've made some nice improvements over the offseason, bringing in a Solomon Thomas on the defensive line, Yannick Ngakoue, who's one of the prized possessions as an edge in this free agency class. Leatherwood, although we think it was a reach, he's still a good offensive lineman for Bama. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Bring in Kenyon Drake, so now dual running back threat with Josh Jacobs could be interesting as well, based on the fact that the Giants can't cover tight ends, and Darren Waller, we've seen him explode for 100-plus yard games. From the Giants side of things on the offense, the Raiders defense just isn't good enough, in my personal opinion, even with all these acquisitions. Trayvon Mulrig, who they drafted as well, was a steal at the safety position in the second round as well. They just, in my personal opinion, don't have enough to stop them defensively. At least they shouldn't, my personal opinion, because I think they were the second worst defensive football, only behind the Jets last year. And I don't think they've made enough improvements to really, again, not the Giants' offense was so good last year either, but much improved. A lot of high hopes for this team going forward on the offensive side of the ball, and I think they should be able to get away with the win in this one.
Yeah, I think this is the other game. This is the one game on the schedule that I'm probably writing off as a dub for sure. I don't think the Raiders – I really don't think the Raiders had a great draft. You've look at Mayock's track record. It's not great. And I probably would have to say that I would definitely agree that Alex Leatherwood's a reach, even though I actually saw a few highlights of him. He's not that bad. I would definitely.
No, he's a great player.
No, he is
good.
He is. I agree. I just don't know if he's necessarily top. I don't know if he was top 18 worthy, is what I'm saying. But with that having been said, the Raiders do have some offensive weapons that the Giants are going to have to look out for. I'm not 100% sure that they're going to. Darren Waller, they might struggle with, because as Tom and I say ad nauseum, tight ends, you gotta. But at the same time, their defense, at the end of the day, they do not have the defense, and I like the improved offense of the Giants, so I got to give it to them this day.
And the last thing I'll say on the Raiders,
that I'm for sure concrete picking the Giants for sure.
Well, again, I'm not going to make it a concrete pick, because the last thing I'll say about the Raiders is that they can play up to the Chiefs, but they can also play down to the Jets, and they showed us that last year in 2020. So what does 2021 have in store? I'm not sure, but in Week 10, by the way, I love that we have our bye in Week 10 right in the middle of the schedule. I think that's a perfect time to have it as well, to give us, an extra week to prepare for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Monday Night Football, again, 8:15 p.m. Of course, our 2 Monday Night Football games are against the two teams that went to the Super Bowl last year.
Wow.
And the Giants played the Bucs on Monday Night Football last year and lost 25-23. You could argue if, Jones played just a tad better that game, had one less turnover, the Giants come away victorious and shock the world again. And there's so many games you could say, well, if the Giants win that game, they're in the playoffs, right? If you had 5 to 6 games that told you that last year, that should tell you something heading into 2021. If Jones takes the next step forward, the line is going to improve. We know that. They were 31st last year and half the line was hurt. So I'm starting to lean with the Giants' perspective. I'm not as concerned with the line as I was before the draft, learning more now that Will Hernandez was hurt as well after the COVID stint. So, again, this should be an interesting game against the Bucs. They added some pieces. They got Joe Tryon, who the Giants loved apparently in round 2 if he was there. But, look, it was another tough game. But the Giants are going to compete in every single one of these games. I think there's a chance there's not one game that the Giants lose marginally this year.
I hope so. But with this game, I think the difference between last year and this year's matchup with Tampa, while we did improve significantly on the offense and, take it for what it is on the defense, while I think we improved in the secondary, I don't think anybody would argue that maybe we lessened a little bit on the line considering Dalvin Tomlinson, the loss of him, and we didn't necessarily replace him in the draft. So hoping that B.J. Hill or Dexter Lawrence, whatever Patrick Graham wants to assemble on that defensive line, whether it's a 3-4, go back to a 4-3, we'll see what happens. But with that being said, with this Tampa team, the difference between this year and last year is that they weren't the Tampa team yet. They were the Tampa team come week 11, come week 12, when everything was there and everything was flowing. They were still trying to develop. Talk about a team that needed an offseason to practice to get together with one another. They were a team that was pieced together in the offseason and didn't necessarily have the time to glue together. And what I loved about this Tampa team so much last year, and you don't see what a lot of NFL teams, is that with every NFL team, there's always one weapon that is going to go off. With Tampa, every single one of these weapons can go off. It's just a matter of which one Tom Brady wants to choose for that game. Whether it's going to be Gronk, whether it's going to be Brate, whether it's going to be Godwin, whether it's going to be Evans, whether it's going to be Fournette, whether it's going to be Jones, whether it's going to be Antonio Brown, nobody's going to know. And no matter how good the Giants' defense is again, offensively, can you compete with them? Because even their defense, while Patrick Mahomes didn't have an offensive line in front of him, they were held to no touchdowns in the Super Bowl against Patrick Mahomes. That's still a lot to stand for going into a season where they have an off season to play.
Yeah, I think the Buccaneers can probably emerge this year just as strong as they were last year. I think a lot of people knew that this was a team that slowly over the course of a few years was very strong defensively. If you look at their roster, from 2019 and 2020, the defensive side, it's mostly the same. I think once they got a leader like Brady, like Kyle mentioned, once they had time to really gel during the course of the season, I think that was when we got to really see the true potential of the Buccaneers. And I'm not going to lie, this is going to be another very tough game for the Giants. And as I said about the Chiefs, I think Patrick Graham has to come up with, I don't want to say a near perfect game plan, but pretty close to it, if you know what I mean. So I think this is another game where the Giants can probably hang in there because, like I said, they did get better last year. Well, this offseason, obviously, with what they made. But at the end of the day, I just think the Buccaneers have too many weapons, and I think the Buccaneers most likely edge the Giants out in a close one, but should be a great game to watch. I'm really looking forward to that one.
Yep. I mean, we'll see when we get to week 11 how both teams are faring out. But week 12, we finally play the Philadelphia Eagles. This game is going to be at home at MetLife at 1 p.m. Giants fans have to wait until after Thanksgiving to play this football team, which is a shame. Eagles wide receiver Devontae Smith against the Giants secondary. Oh, yeah. I cannot wait for that. I think the biggest thing, too, is even though they did jump the Giants to get Devontae Smith in the draft, I'm not complaining. I'm not harping over it. Why? Because thank you for all the draft capital next year. You gave us 2 first-round picks that we're able to trade down with the Chicago Bears. And not to mention, I think we got we traded the 5th round.
We got a 5th round this year and a 4th round next year.
Yeah, the 5th rounder we traded away to move up in the 3rd this pick, and we got a 4th round from them next year as well. So, I mean, I'm not complaining. And, I think Devontae Smith would have been much better off as a Z receiver to start his career than an X receiver in Philadelphia. He's going to be the X receiver, and he's going to see a lot of James Bradberry in that game. Not to mention, the Giants secondary is so deep, guys. I mean, just look at who we have. Bradberry, Adoree Jackson, Darnay Holmes, and Aaron Robinson, who they're going to compete for the 2 slot positions, or that 1 slot position. And then you also have Isaac Yiadom from last year. You drafted Rodarius Williams. There's a good chance one of them might not even make the roster. Then you have Julian Love with Xavier McKinney, Logan Ryan, and Jabril Peppers. Julian Love could be an NFL starter on a lot of defenses, guys.
Is Sam Beal still there, too?
He's still there. He's still there.
Yeah. They're deep. They're definitely deep.
They're deep, and Devontae Smith doesn't scare me as much in that game. I think Devontae Smith probably I forget if I was talking about it with you guys or one of you, but I think Smith combined in the 2 games against the Giants probably totals over 100 yards combined total, a little bit over 100. I mean, he could have one good game against us. I think maybe the second game, you'll have some more film to go off of. But again, I don't like Jalen Hurts. He doesn't scare me. I mean, I wasn't a huge Carson Wentz guy either, but I did think he was much better than Jalen Hurts. I think the Eagles ruined him. That new head coach in town. They did draft a couple of good players. I don't know why everyone's trashing the Milton Williams pick. I actually like that for them because
I love that.
Fletcher Cox is 32, 33 years old. You need a replacement long term. And they lost Nate Jerry to the 49ers. They lost a couple of guys. They lost Vinny Curry. So, again, the Eagles are the one team in the division that I could easily see the Giants sweeping, especially now that we beat them last year at home. I think there's a really good chance we could win this game. And, again, this is one of those games where I'm expecting a win 100%. Like, anything less would be beyond disappointment. But, this is a divisional game. They always play us tough. Let's talk some Eagles, guys.
Oh, I cannot wait for this game. I said it before at the beginning of the show. This should have been week 1. I have so many years worth of salt built up over losses to the Eagles. It's not even funny.
That's funny.
Yeah, no, I'm really, really excited for this game. And you know what I'm really looking forward to, guys? MetLife's going to have fans back in the stadium. It is going to be loud and amped up when they come back. That is the safest bet in Vegas right here for you. And you know what? The Eagles, while Tom made a point, I think they did make a few good draft picks, and I can't say that they did wrong with Devontae Smith. I think they were smart to trade up, much to what was initially my chagrin. You can check my reaction on Andy's show from that. But I think the Giants at the end of the day, I think they're better off. I thank you so much, Ryan Pace, for all that draft capital. The Giants, I like what they did, obviously, and I think this Eagles squad is significant, is in a decline. Obviously, like losing Carson Wentz to Jalen Hurts is a major downgrade. Like, I know, Tom, you weren't as high on Carson Wentz as I am, but like I don't think Jalen Hurts. I've seen enough of his highlights from last year to know that guy ain't it. So I that's a game that I truly expect the Giants to win, and I think they probably will, given what happened at the end of the season last year. And heck, I'm sure Joe Judge and a lot of the guys are still salty at them for letting Nate Sudfeld play last year, even though obviously I'm over that game, but we'll see. I kind of hope the players aren't, because it's going to give them a little nice motivation revenge tour. I don't know how you feel about that, Kyle.
Listen, man, I'll forever be salty about Devonta Smith. I will, again, while I don't necessarily think that, while I root for the player, yeah, but I don't know how established and how great he could truly be. Like Tom said, being the X right now, just based on the fact when you look at that, offense for the Eagles right now, it's just so tough, because outside of Dallas Goedert and Miles Sanders, who's really there? Like, they've established guys like Greg Ward, Travis Fulgham is there, who they developed and looks good. Jalen Reagor is still there. JJ Whiteside. The defense was really bad this year. I don't know how good it's going to be this year. The offensive line, I think, is a little bit improved. It was very hurt last year. They had 14 different line changes, which I don't think will happen again because of how hurt they were. They should have Landon Dickerson in there, who's really good, one of the best offensive linemen in this draft. Again, this is another game where I could say comfortably that they should win this game. But I will say this. The Giants lost last year because of Richard Rodgers, the tight end, the third-string tight end, beat us. So if that could happen like that, I wouldn't be surprised if the game is closer than it should be. But I think we should be able to come away with the win.
I have to one-up you on that. Richard Rodgers was the leading receiver in both meetings.
That's what I'm saying.
Both meetings.
Yep.
Which is insane to even think about. But yeah, I think Smith's going to have a good career. It's just, I just don't know if he'll be with the Eagles for all of it. It depends how they build that offense over the next couple of years, if they can be competitive. But again, teammate of Landon Dickerson, I definitely think that'll be a good duo for them. Week 13, this is the extra game. They're at the Miami Dolphins. Jalen Waddle and Tua Tagovailoa, former teammates. Again, I feel like we should have thought more about who the Dolphins would pick at 6, because quite frankly, Jalen Waddle was the receiver that had a little bit more chemistry with Tua at Alabama over Devontae Smith, and it never clicked really. Could Xavier McKinney have the inside scoop on these guys? Absolutely. He faced them in practice a lot throughout the years. At Miami, it's going to be tough. Miami's an improved football team. Brian Flores has done an excellent job. I think Joe Judge is on a similar path as him as far as developing this young breed of talent and trying to rebuild sooner than later. So I don't think the Giants are really rebuilding anymore. It all depends on Daniel Jones and the offensive line. I think that's what you're really banking on. And if they perform, you could say that rebuild is done. And Miami, they're a team. They have some weapons. I do not like what they have at running back. They got my guy out of Notre Dame on their offensive line, who I happen to love for them. I think that was a steal, trading up to 42 to get him excellent value. I think he was a back-end first, early second guy. He went mid-second, and early to mid-second. And then, their defense is still really good. Not really good, but last year they were good. They were much improved. So it'll be interesting to see. Mike Gesicki, a lot of people don't like him as a tight end. I happen to like him.
He was so good last year.
Yeah, people are like, oh, but he's not a legit tight end. He is. He is a legit tight end. And, I think it was – I know who said that now about Gesicki. I'm not going to name that person's name, but so I think he's the X factor for Miami, right? I don't think Waddle's going to be much of an issue, as people are saying. I think it's going to be the middle of the field again, covering that tight end. But I think the Giants, very winnable game.
It should be a tight one for sure. Definitely one of the more entertaining games, I think, to watch this season for the Giants, as the storyline is kind of the same, where they both have stacked defenses, especially in the secondary, where, you look at Miami, Xavier Howard and Byron Jones. That's probably the best cornerback tandem in football. Maybe Marcus Peters and Marlon Humphrey. Brian Flores has done a phenomenal job, like you said, Tom. Some questions at running back, but I really love what Myles Gaskin was able to do last year. They brought in Malcolm Brown from the Rams. And that receiving core, a lot of people forget, not only do they have Devontae Parker, Jalen Waddle, and Jakeem Grant, but everybody forgets they added Will Fuller in the offseason, who we know, when healthy, is a phenomenal second wide receiver to have along with those guys. So whether he fills in as the second or third guy, that's a deep offensive weaponry for Tua Tagovailoa. Just a matter of, I think, in this game, which quarterback performs better. I think that's what it's going to come down to.
Hank, anything to add on Miami?
Yeah, Miami, I think, has definitely been one of the more intriguing teams to follow. You saw how they were deliberately taking 2019. They got their guy, too, Tagovailoa. I actually like that they got Jalen Waddle. I think from what I understand, they've got great chemistry together. And, I think it'll be an interesting matchup to see. Brian Flores, I think he and Joe Judge are really similar in the fact that they both came from Bill Belichick. And I like how they both made the decision how let's not really try to be Belichick. Let's be our own people, but yet do some of the same things that Bill Belichick taught. And you can see with the Giants and the Dolphins, it's really working. And I think last year with the Giants, the more I really think about it, it kind of had the similar feeling to the 2019 Dolphins, and the fact that, you knew they weren't going to be great. By the second half of the season, you saw them fighting and winning games that they probably should have won. And so I think they're on similar paths, and I think this game could really go either way. I don't really have any prediction whatsoever for this one, but I'm really excited for it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There was one other thing I wanted to say about this game. The matchup of this game, Andrew Thomas against Jalen Phillips. That's going to be fun to watch. So we will see what happens with that. I forgot they got him as their second first-round pick. But week 14, we traveled to L.A. to play the Chargers, 4:05 start time. It'll be Daniel Jones against Justin Herbert, another young quarterback battle. This is pretty much 3 weeks in a row where the Giants are going up against young quarterbacks who are in their first or second year. So actually all three of them are in their second year, Herbert, Tua, and Hurts. So Justin Herbert was a guy who was linked to the Giants for over a year. Then the Chargers draft him. And it's interesting. The Chargers are a team that got a lot better in the offseason. They fixed their offensive line. They drafted Rashawn Slater. They got Corey Linsley and Matt Filer. I like where they're at personally as an offense right now. I'm not so sure who their tight end is because they did lose Hunter Henry to the Patriots.
Were they the team that added Jared Cook? I think they were the team.
They might have been. Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, but he is relatively old now. Their defense is still a little bit concerning to me. They do have Derwin James and Joey Bosa. They are improved in that respect. Drew Tranquill should be back for them off his injury. So this is going to be a tough one. The Giants are not very successful playing against the Chargers on the road, not to mention that I really like this Brandon Staley coach that they're bringing in. I really think he can do some good things for them. He led one of the top defenses in the league last year, so I think their defense is going to take a step forward. And Justin Herbert, he's something special. I'll tell you that much. So this is going to be a tough one.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I think what a lot of people forget with this Chargers team as well is that Austin Eckler was basically hurt the entirety of the season last year, and he's coming back, who, again, is one of the best Swiss Army knife players in the NFL, combined with a Keenan Allen, a Mike Williams, a Guyton, who was a speedster last year, bringing in Jared Cook on the offense. The offensive line is much and improved Rashawn Slater and Corey Linsley. The defense, I think, is really, really, really good and underrated. At least it will be this year, as Brandon Staley's a defensive guy. And Justin Herbert emerged himself last year, in my personal opinion, as a top 5, top 7 quarterback in the league. And if he could do what he did last year again, it's going to be a tough out for any of these teams that are going up against the Chargers.
Definitely.
Chargers. Chargers will be another tough matchup. I think that'll go either way. I think the storyline of Daniel Jones versus Justin Herbert is going to be the storyline that I think everyone's going to be most intrigued with about that game, since you got two young quarterbacks. And again, much like the Miami game, it's another one that I'm really looking forward to. I think it could really go either way, and another matchup that I'm really looking forward to this year.
Yeah, 2 straight road games for the Giants. They come back home week 15 to play the Cowboys at 1 p.m. Again, that should be interesting. Week 15, second matchup against Dallas, and then week 16, they're at Philadelphia at 1 p.m. 2 straight divisional games. They end the season. 3 out of their last 4 are divisional games. But in week 16 at Philly, the Giants have lost 8 straight games in Philadelphia. They've blown a double-digit lead to lose in 3 straight seasons at Philly. Evan Ingram had that infamous drop last year. Daniel Jones tripped over himself. Is this the year the Giants finally win in Philadelphia in week 16? Because I think so.
Yes, absolutely. Something's got to give. a blind dog finds its bone eventually. They got to win in Philadelphia. I think the losing streak's been so long. Actually, you know what, Tom? I'm going to one-up you with that. I'm going to be bold and say this is going to be the first year. This is going to be the first time in so long the Giants sweep Philly. There.
Set it in stone, Hank?
I thought I said that. I thought I said that earlier.
Oh, you did? Oh, yeah. I think you did. You did.
Yeah.
You might have, but I wanted to
I remember saying it. Yeah.
I just wanted to put my stamp on and say that I think the Giants are going to sweep Philadelphia this year.
No, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
We shall see. But anyway, nothing much more else to add, right? We previewed Philadelphia in the same matchup, kind of be the same thing. At this point in the season, where I do say this is that this can potentially be a trap game, as I think the division will be close all season. Going into Week 16, this will probably be a must-win game for the Giants to gain a playoff berth.
That's crazy, too, because you look at these last 4 games from Week 15 onward, Dallas, Philly, Chicago, and Washington, all 4 of these are winnable games. This could be a situation where the Giants have to run the table or win 3 out of their last 4. So Week 17, we're heading to Chicago. The Giants facilitated the Bears into trading up for Justin Fields. The Giants now own the Bears' 2021 first-round pick, so this game has a lot of extra motivation added to it now that if the Bears lose, that could help the Giants draft stock in 2022.
Andy's either going to hate us or love us when you're on the
Well, let's knock Andy Hopper for a second. Andy was very excited about that Justin Fields pick. So was I, because I knew that was the wrong decision.
Oh my goodness!
And it has nothing to do with the player. It has nothing to do with the player, Justin Fields. Look, I like what the Bears did in the draft, but they didn't have enough firepower in terms of draft picks in the day 2, early day 3 range to really help their team and make them contenders in the NFC North to pair with the Packers, which makes me a lot more confident knowing that when you draft a rookie quarterback, you're probably not going very far in that first year. And knowing if Aaron Rodgers sticks around in that division, if Kirk Cousins is still there, I'm confident in these other teams. We spoke to a Lions fan. I'm confident that they're going to improve as well. The Bears could finish anywhere from 2nd to 4th in that division, in my personal opinion. They're not winning that division. I mean, even if Rodgers does go, I don't think he will this offseason. But look, I'm confident in this game for the Giants at Chicago. Yes, tough game at Soldier Field. I mean, very historic place.
When was the last time we beat them at Soldier? I know we beat them when they came to MetLife a little while ago, but I don't think we beat them at Soldier in a long time.
We beat them in 18 when they came to MetLife. We lost last year. I think that was a road game, right? Or is that a home game?
That was a road game.
That was a road game. But I'm telling you, the Giants are a different team. There's going to be a lot of punch added into this game, like a lot of extra juice.
That game is going to be so cold, too. That's going to be like a 10 degree game. That's in the middle of December.
A very old school type of game, maybe.
Oh, Kyle, to answer your question, 2007, we beat them at Soldier Field.
Long time ago.
That was when I think Reuben Jones scored the game-winning touchdown in that game, actually. That was one of their comebacks that year.
Wasn't that 2006?
No, 2007. We lost them in 2006. That was the Devin Hester game.
You're right. Yes, I do remember that now.
That was actually the first Giants Sunday Night Football game on NBC.
The Chicago game should be very interesting. It's, in fact, the most interesting game on the schedule because of where it's placed. There's a lot of expectation and value added into that football game. So,
and I think by this point in time, too, if Justin Fields doesn't start off the season, I think we'd see him in this game, too.
Oh, he absolutely probably will be starting in this game, even if Andy Dalton does start the season. I mean, you want to find out. I mean, you drafted him at number 11. You want to find out what you got, or at least you want to start to. So in Week 18, we play the Washington football team at 1 o'clock p.m. This game will be for the NFC East, in my opinion. The winner of this game will be crowned NFC East champion in 2021. Again, I don't like what the Cowboys have on defense. I think they're going to be threats early on, but I think they're going to start to stumble towards the midway point of the season. Again, I think it's going to come down to these 2 teams. I mean, it'll come down to 3 teams, but the last week, the winner of this game will probably take home the crown because Washington, again, this is a home game for the Giants too, which gives us an advantage, right? If we lose to Washington, I think that comes on the road. I mean, it's very rare that the Giants lose at home to Washington. If you remember 2005, when we won the NFC East, we won 11-5 and Eli Manning's second year. We lost Week 16 in Washington where Santana Moss went off on us. I mean, that was kind of a trap game for the Giants, but I don't trust their quarterback situation. Fitzpatrick wins them games, but Fitzpatrick also loses them games, and that's regardless of what team he's on. And I'm not really scared of that, especially in Week 18. He may not even be starting at that point. Who knows? So I'm kind of confident heading into that game.
Yep. Something I forgot to mention when we was previewing the first week of the Washington football team real quick here is that, something we really didn't talk about is, we hope and trust that the Giants organization is in the right direction with this offensive line. But in a Week 18 matchup, Tom, you're betting up for the winner of this game will be the NFC East champion. I hope that defensive front for Washington is not eating up on this offensive line come Week 18.
Well, I'm gonna go a little further with what Tom said. I could definitely see them I can definitely see the winner going for the NFC East. I have a feeling this is going to be another game that we could easily see getting flexed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
like maybe even moving them up. I'm going to be honest. This probably isn't even the only game on the season I think that could be flexed. I see there's a lot of games at like 1:00, and they could very well end up being meaningful down the road come the playoff push. And this is going to be a great game. And like I said, I'm not 100% confident about the Week 2 matchup on Thursday night because I know there's a chance that Washington could finally get a win. But with that being said, if there's any game that I'm confident that the Giants will beat Washington, it's easily the home game for sure.
And the last game of the regular season. Yes. Not to mention, now just because I said this game I think will be for the division, that doesn't mean I'm counting Dallas out. I think they very well could be competing for a wild card spot because they have one of the easiest schedules in the NFL this year. So, you mentioned the games that could be flexed for the Giants. They have 11 1 p.m. games, and Hank, they play the NFC East in 3 of their last 4 games. I know you had did you have a little fun fact about that?
Yeah, there were 2 years. There are 2 years off the top of my head, 2 memorable seasons off the top of my head where that's happened with the Giants finishing the season with 3 of their 4 opponents being division rivals. 2011, the Super Bowl winning season, they played 2 games against Dallas, Week 14 and Week 17. Everyone's going to forget about this one because they lost, but we had that clunker against Washington Week 15, the one where somehow we let Rex Grossman torch us. And of course, the one non-divisional game was the Jets game with Victor Cruz scoring the 99-yard touchdown. Yeah. And then, of course, there's also the 2002 season. That was the year they won the last 4 games of the season. If I remember correctly, I think Week 14 was the blowout against Dallas, and then they went to Washington Week 15. Or maybe I might have that mixed up. It was one of those 2. But then I know Week 16 was the Colt game where Kerry Collins absolutely torched the Indianapolis Colts secondary, and then Week 17 they had that epic win against the Philadelphia Eagles Week 17. So those were both memorable playoff seasons, and I guess if the pattern holds, this could be yet another memorable season for the Giants.
And that's where Jeremy Shockey, I'm pretty sure he won Offensive Rookie of the Year, only scoring 2 touchdowns the entire year.
Correct. And David Gibson, the Colts secondary guy, still wants the truck number that ran him over.
And Jeremy Shockey's backup was Dan Campbell, the current head coach of the Detroit Lions.
Yes.
Yes. I was just looking over the schedule, and I'm not a history buff like Hank, just pulling out random facts from 05 and 07 about the last time the Giants beat the Bears at Soldier Field. But we don't have a Sunday night football game this year. When is the last time that something like that has happened? I thought every team was entitled to a Sunday night football game. That's interesting.
I don't know. That's why I don't know if every team gets one every year.
Because you know what it is? I don't think that a lot of teams get 2 Monday nights. We get 2 Monday nights. I think every team usually gets a Thursday, a Monday, and a Sunday, but we don't have a Sunday this year. I was going through the schedule. I was like, do we have a Sunday? And we don't.
No.
Again, don't be surprised if they get flexed.
Yeah, true.
So, guys, just a couple more key takeaways, and then we will wrap this up. But Week 1, like I said, we play the Broncos. Eagles will open up at the Falcons. Cowboys will open up at the Bucs on Thursday Night Football, and then Washington opens up at home against the Chargers. So I think I'm not saying the Broncos are an easy matchup, but the Giants have the most favorable matchup within the division in Week 1. So that could lead to an early division lead potentially for the Giants. And if that's the case, you have to be optimistic heading into 2021. Again, we will talk more about the schedule as we get closer. to the regular season. But Kyle and Hank, anything else you guys wanted to add before we wrap this up today?
No,
Not
I think
really.
we covered all the bases.
Covered
Do
as
we
much
want-
as we could.
I know we said we didn't want to do games in stone. Do we want to predict an overall record or no?
Oh, we could.
Yes.
Why don't you go
Good.
first? You proposed the idea, so I'll put you right on the spot.
Put me right on the spot. I see. It's tough, man. It's really tough because it's all on the back of Daniel Jones, what he's able to do with this offense. You have the tools, just execute. I'm going to
This
say
will not
8
be
wins.
held against you, by the way.
I'm going to say, so we're playing, 17 games this year? I'm going to say 8 and 9. Let's say 8
Okay.
and 9 is where we stand at.
Okay. That could still mean a playoff berth because you do play in the NFC East. So
It is
you
true.
never know.
That is true.
Hank, what do you got?
You know what? I said 10-6 on one of our earlier off-season episodes. I kind of have to revise that now because Roger Goodell, you wanted to add an extra game to the schedule, so I'm just gonna screw it. I'm just gonna say 11-6, just
Slap
like I
on
said
another
that.
win. Slap on another win, Hank. Do
Wow.
it.
Exactly, Kyle. That's exactly what I'm doing. I
Another
said
game,
it.
no problem.
Say
Another
that
game,
again.
another game, no problem.
Yeah, exactly. I said it at the draft show, and I'm going to stick by that pick. 11-6, Giants are going back to the playoffs. Big Blue is back. That's all I got to say.
So I know I sounded more confident than Hank during this stream, but my record actually won't be 11-6 for the Giants. I'm going to have one less win. I think 10-7 is where the Giants are going to go, but that can change as we get closer to the regular season. We'll make our official predictions as we get closer. But these are way too early Giants 2021 season predictions. But Hank and Kyle, wanted to thank you guys very much for joining me today. Folks, remember, Giants 3-day rookie minicamp starts today, so that should be a lot of fun. I'll have a video on that later this weekend, so that should be a lot of fun. But again, one more time, guys, thank you so much for joining. Really appreciate it.